User interface in games is something that, while I personally have always found fascinating, often goes unnoticed. In fact, many games try to make it as basic and unobtrusive as possible and treat it like a complete afterthought. Persona 5 is not one of those games. The flashy and over-the-top interface that goes in line with the game's Phantom Thief's aesthetic and themes of rebellion brought attention to what is often overlooked. And Atlus's most recent releases of Persona 3 Reload and Metaphor Refantasio show that they do not mess around when it comes to creating great-looking and feeling user interfaces. This is even further shown when you look at games like Persona 4 that came before them, which to me begs the question of how we got here. What did the older Persona games look like, and how has the graphic design in the series evolved over time? What about the spin-offs? Do they take the best of their original game and add a new spin, or are they just imitations? Little did I know that trying to explore these questions would lead me to spending the past few weeks playing every single Persona game and writing 40 pages of notes. Most people might find this topic and the amount of time I've put into it rather absurd, but as an artist and a huge Persona fan, I really wanted to take some time to analyze the evolution of the user interface in the Persona series. And first, I want to define what I mean when I'm talking about UI. In this case, it is basically just how the players interact with the game, specifically through visual elements. Stuff like menus, text boxes, and heads-up displays, as well as graphic design choices like color palette, icons, motif, font, and layout. I'll be talking about how these aspects look aesthetically and how they feel to play. Also, this will be more of an overview than a full-on analysis, as we have 25 entries to get through, and there will be video chapters for each one. I tried to keep to mostly early game footage and not show major spoilers, but considering the nature of these games, you have been warned. So without further ado, grab a snack and let's get into the first Persona game from all the way back in 1996 on the PS1, Revelations Persona. And yes, that does mean I'm playing the Americanized localization. It made a lot of weird changes, but the menus remain the same, and that's all I really care about. And those menus are definitely something very different than what we see later in the series, but it's very clear from the very start that Atlus was more experimental and unique with the user interface. And unique is really the best word I can think of to describe a lot of what we see. Maybe ugly as well, but I do really respect that they tried something, even if I don't think it works in some cases, but we'll get there. In the opening scene, you see the text box and HUD elements with this very grungy metallic feel. There's a lot of shiny, dark grays, and the interior of the text box is green. But that's only by default. It can, interestingly, be changed in the menu, which is very different than the modern Persona UI, which is perfectly crafted to give a certain effect. On top of that, yellow and gold are used as common accent colors. But then you get to the menu and it has this blue to black gradient with this gray grid on top. All these things together aren't cohesive or pretty, in my personal opinion, but it creates a distinct aesthetic that really makes it feel like this game and places it in the time period. There's also some interesting effects and the transitions, which I can't tell if I love or hate. I think I like them in concept, but they're a little too long and slow for my liking. And then there's the command menu, which I feel nothing could have truly prepared me for. Once again, I really respect that they went for something, even if I personally am not a fan of how it turned out. I think the menu being made up of circles that orbit the section name is very interesting and, once again, unique, but I think it is harder to navigate than just a typical list menu. At the very least, each orb being a different color helps with navigation. And then the submenus don't really show anything too special. They follow the aesthetic of everything else and are just pretty simple and easy to navigate. Even though there is a lot of stuff buried under layers of menus, it makes sense and everything seems pretty easy to find. Except for the map being under system, that doesn't really make sense to me, and it makes it a pain to find, like to navigate to the map. At the bottom of the menu screen is all of your party members, their HP and SP, how much money you have, and your playtime. This information is very useful and I'm glad it's there, but interestingly, the box that it's in follows a very different aesthetic than the rest of the game. The gold is more dull and the gray isn't a shiny metallic gray. It's very interesting, and once again, I think this game really lacks cohesion in the style elements, but that also makes it very interesting to me. At least the battle UI follows the same steel and gold metal with the yellow and green accents of a lot of the other menus. The battle menu has a lot of information packed into a small space, which makes it very text heavy, but all things considered, it's not too bad to navigate. The 6 main actions are at the top of the screen and all make sense. And the bottom of your screen has all of your party members and the moon phase. It also shows where on the grid each party member is, which I find is really helpful, but there are things like turn orders which you don't really have an easy way of knowing. When you start a turn, this grid is replaced by the action your party member is taking, and then switches back once they have taken it, which is a feature I like, but once again, turn orders would be greatly appreciated. Also, if one of your party members has a status effect, it will say bad, and have an indicator of the effect, and it stacks over their head in the actual battle. And next to your party member's name, it shows the HP and SP, and the numbers will appear in green to indicate if it's full, and white if it's not. But there is no way to, at a glance, see the total amount or the percentage left. I will acknowledge that with the limited space it is understandable, but I think there could have been ways to show this easier. The stat and level up menus also feel a little overwhelming with information, especially when it comes to the affinities. There's also a lot of small things, like how in the stores or the Velvet Room, it doesn't say the persona's affinity or who the weapons are for, and while you're in first person mode in dungeons, there is a mini-map, but in the overworld, you just get a compass and small stuff like that. But overall, despite how different the UI is from what comes later, you can definitely see the foundations here, and say what you will with the menus, I know, I have, but they are not bland or boring, which I very much appreciate. Now, let's move on to Persona 2 Innocent Sin. First of all, I would like to note that this game was never officially released outside of Japan, so I am using a fan translation, which can affect things like font choice and layout, but it really shouldn't have too big of an impact. This game's aesthetic is very different from Persona 1. It is more clean, arguably looks better, but also less unique and interesting, which leads me to liking it less overall. If you look at the text box, there's much thinner outlines, and the text boxes are a translucent blue gradient. And once again, the color can be changed. There is also now a heading line for character names, which appears in yellow. Overall, this is such a minor but great improvement than having the characters' names in the text box with what they are saying. And it's also worth mentioning that this game has actual different portraits for the characters, which is such a great change. When it comes to the menus, I think they are overall just pretty basic and boring. While I did call Persona 1 ugly when I first saw it, I think the value of its style really shines through when you compare it to these bland gray gradients in Persona 2. The pixel art icons that you see in shop menus and showing your party members in the save menu, I think are great steps in the right direction for just adding a little more color and interest to these menus. However, from a functionality standpoint, this game has a feature that I absolutely love, and that is the multi-select feature when buying and selling at shops. And spoiler alert, this is dropped in future games, which I think is crazy. This feature is just really helpful for budgeting money and just making it easier to buy stuff. Like Persona 1, the command menu shows your party members, but now it also includes HP and SP bars, current amount, and total amount, as well as status effects, which are all very nice improvements. But it changes the submenu options, and I think they are a little more confusing than Persona 1. And once again, this menu is just so much more boring and basic. It is easier to navigate and more user-friendly, but it makes me really miss those pops of color in Persona 1. The background is a blue to black gradient by default, but this can now be changed. I also think it's important to note that the party status menu is vastly improved and shows a lot more information. And I love the transitions, especially the card flipping, and they feel like a very rudimentary version of what we'll eventually see in the future. Moving over to the battle menu, it follows a very similar theme, simple but effective. All white text on a gray background with the very occasional pops of color. On the bright side, it is easy to navigate. Similar to the command menu, there are now HP and SP bars, and the number displayed shows the current amount, which, as I mentioned before, is a great change, just very helpful in battle. It is also very easy to change actions and turn order, and we'll get there, but not all games are like that. During battle, when it is a party member's turn, it'll say act, and it'll say next when they haven't gone yet. But I honestly prefer how Persona 1 actually shows what that action is. In this game, you just have to remember it. I also think the level up screen sees a functionality increase, as it now shows how your stat points actually affect your stats, like if your strength or health points increase. But the Persona and demon affinities continue to be rather confusing and convoluted. This is not just a UI thing though. I think gameplay-wise, there's just a lot going on in that respect. There's also now a proper overworld map, and the area of the city you're going to glows when you select. In dungeons, there is no longer a mini-map. It's been replaced by the compass from Persona 1's overworld. This game does not have as complicated dungeons as Persona 1, but I do think the mini-map is still quite helpful. And that's about it. Once again, I've mentioned this quite a lot throughout the section, but I do think this game sees a massive functionality increase over Persona 1, but it really loses the aesthetic. And I'm just not a fan of these bland gray gradient menus. So let's move on to Persona 2's sequel, Eternal Punishment. It's pretty much identical to Innocent Sin, and in situations like this, I'm only going to go over things that are actually different. Now, due to this being an official release instead of a fan translation, the font in the text boxes is different, and I do much prefer the Eternal Punishment one. I don't really know how to describe it, I just think it has a nice fun and funky energy. There are also new options for the menu and text box backgrounds. And interestingly, I noticed that the save menu no longer shows pixel art icons of your party members, and that is literally it. There might be more minor changes, but that is all that I noticed in my time with this game. Now it's time for the game that marked a huge turning point in the Persona series, and that is, of course, Persona 3. Besides the huge changes it made to the Persona series overall, Persona 3 is well known for having a lot of different versions, and the original version, very few people have actually played. And as far as I'm aware, the only UI difference between it and FES is the menu screen, so for the rest of this analysis, I'll be using FES footage. So let's talk about those menu screens. Between the two versions, the menu is the same, but with a different logo. And in Persona 3, it is blue, while in FES, it is green. Then, in the original, you get a silhouette of Igor and the option to choose to start the game, while in FES, you get Elizabeth and choose between the journey or the answer. And that's the only difference between them. However, this will start a very long-running Persona trend, not only of re-releases, but specifically of those re-releases changing the menu screen. So let's talk about aesthetics, which I'm very happy to state this game has more of than Persona 2, which you can immediately see through the name selection screen, with the pale blue and the framing around the box compared to just like boring gray. Persona 3 is where we see the start of the trend of each game getting its own main color, in this case, blue. But as a result, we lose the ability to customize the text and menu backgrounds. And the text background in this game is just a boring old white gray, which is a far cry from the bright greens and blues and customizations of the previous games, but it definitely makes up for it. Besides the variety of different blues, a pale yellow-orange is used as an accent color, and since they're complementary colors, they look great together. This game also has a much more rounded look than the previous games, which you can see in the text box being tapered or how the date is displayed with sweeping curved lines. And overall, overall, the gradients are replaced with these flat blocks of color. Persona 3 as a whole just feels much cleaner with this cohesive color palette and an emphasis on the aforementioned flat color blocks. In comparison, Persona 1 felt almost disjointed with all the different elements. They might look good on their own, but altogether, they did not work. And these major aesthetic changes go a long way at setting the UI apart from what came before and showing the design trend changes in that 6-year gap. So let's get into some finer details. The HUD in the top right corner of the screen shows the important information that comes with the added calendar system. The current date, day of the week, and time of day, along with the moon phase and days until the next full moon. Normally this is blue, but during the dark hour it changes to green. Similarly added with the calendar system is the transition at the end of every day. It is rather simple, but the smooth transitions and cohesive colors make it feel great. The command menu continues to show at-a-glance character info. It has a portrait of Makoto with your currently equipped persona behind him. The bottom also contains your level, money, HP, SP status, and current persona information. But it only shows this for the protagonist and not the other party members. All the main and submenus use the previously mentioned color blocks and smooth transitions that strike a great balance between looking good, feeling good, and being easy to navigate. There is also scrolling text that gives movement to these menus. Also, all the submenu options make sense, and they all have unique UI elements that add more variety while still being consistent. They also make frequent uses of silhouettes, specifically of Makoto. We still aren't at the level of Persona 5, but this is a clear step in the direction that we see the series head towards. However, there are some things that are more difficult than they should be. You can't change party members' equipment through the menu anymore, you have to talk to them. And stuff like this goes in line with a lot of Persona 3's interesting design decisions compared to the earlier games. The map is similar to that of Persona 2 and uses a similar pointer to the walkable ones to show your current location and places a tarot card over the selected location. Now let's talk about everyone's favorite thing, buying stuff. While Persona 1 and 2 had a consistent shop UI for every place you went, Persona 3 gives each shop a unique interface. This helps distinguish them and gives the shops themselves, as well as the shopkeepers, more personality. And as usual, it makes good use of color blocks and smooth animations. The actual interface for each one is the same, but the designs, animations, and colors for them are different, making them feel distinct. I think this works because Persona 3 only has a few main shops, while Persona 1 and 2 had a lot. For stuff like vending machines and less prominent shops, you just get a basic dialogue select menu. However, unfortunately, the ability to multi-buy and multi-sell is removed. On the bright side, you can equip and sell old equipment as you buy new stuff, which saves you from having to fiddle around with the menus. But especially in item shops, the ability to buy multiple things at once was such a good feature. Moving into battle, there is a really cool clock transition used to indicate the start of the dark hour. And the Tartarus terminal selection manages to effectively show the crazy height of this tower and distinguish each block. While dungeon crawling, the HUD has had quite a few changes. The status of the party members is now shown in the heads-up display, with profile portraits to represent each one, which are just smaller versions of what is shown in battle. These portraits also change when they are afflicted by an ailment. We also see the return of the minimap, replacing the compass that came before it, which I think is an overall very positive change. And when you're actually in battle, the old generic text-based battle menus have been replaced with a wheel of icons reminiscent of a revolver barrel. It honestly reminds me of a better version of the Persona 1 command menu. However, it can be annoying to cycle all the way through. The animations make it take longer, and you will be frequently cycling through them. At least I think it's worth it because of how cool it looks, and since you can't control your party members, you won't have to be using it too much anyways. The skill menu in battle now also has icons to represent the type of skill you are using. But bizarrely, there is a different icon in the skill menu than the description below, and part of me wonders if this is a weird oversight or glitch. This game also has the introduction of all-out attacks, and the pop-ups and cut-ins for it demand a lot of attention and feel really exciting, much more so than the fusion spells in Persona 2. There's also major quality of life improvements with the battle UI, such as showing enemy health bars, buffs, and debuffs. And let's not forget the answer. Except the UI is pretty much the same, but in the menus that previously featured Makoto, Aigis now replaces him. I know that was a lot, but this game really made a lot of changes from the previous ones, and the UI definitely reflects that. This is the first game where we truly see the DNA of the later games, and I think the UI in it is really well done, even if aspects of it are vastly improved later on, such as Persona 4. First of all, can we talk about how nice that main menu is? It shows the Yasugami High hallway with silhouettes of all of the party members, which not only makes more sense than Igor, but starts a trend that we are still seeing in main menus to this day. We are also instantly hit with that iconic Persona 4 yellow, which, if you can't tell, is the main color for this game. Overall, many of the improvements from Persona 3 have stayed, but now with a fresh coat of bright yellow TV paint. Aesthetic-wise, of course, we have the yellow as well as orange as a very prominent accent color, but Persona 4 uses a whole lot of colors to fit the game's TV vibe. We also see the return of the flat color blocks and smooth transitions that were a staple of Persona 3's style. Many of the assets in this game are rounded, such as the text box, HUD, etc., etc. We see a lot of rounded rectangles, circles, and pill shapes. There's also a lot of colorful lines going through the UI elements, like the command menu or help pop-ups. And to me, these are kind of reminiscent of the classic TV color bars and static, but with warmer colors. The HUD in the top right corner once again shows the date and time of day, but weather has replaced the moon phase, which makes a lot of sense. It's also very minor, but the HUD colors change between the real world and the TV world. The end of day calendar transition now also includes the weather, and I originally noted that the style reminded me of TV channel guides, but I am now realizing that it is very obviously modeled off of a weather report, and I don't know how I didn't realize that at first. Anyways, the command menu. I really liked the transitions in this menu, and similarly, the transitions in the pause menu and submenus are great and just super satisfying. I could spend hours opening and closing that menu. Interestingly, the MC's stats have been removed from that menu, which makes sense as it wasn't really necessary and that information is displayed elsewhere. The menus use animated yellow blocks as well as the aforementioned colorful lines to break up the flat colors. And going through the menus, the only loss of functionality I noticed was that the item menu is harder to navigate than in Persona 3, as Persona 3 had different sections, while Persona 4's puts all your items in a list together. But overall, it is a lot of the same functionality and navigation, just with different aesthetics. And the trend of the unique shop menus continues, of course using a similar aesthetic with animated color block effects. However, the layout of the menus themselves are more interesting and dynamic than in Persona 3, and there's more uniqueness between them. This stuff is minor but makes a noticeable difference, and is once again yet another step towards what we will see later. Social links also now have a UI for when you rank up, which includes how far into the rank you are. And the map is pretty similar to Persona 3, but now you teleport to the location you hover over instead of seeing the icon physically move. It does take less time, but I liked how Persona 3's made you feel more connected to the world since you got to see how Makoto traveled through it. Now let's move on to the TV world, which once you enter, there is a CRT filter put over the edges of the screen and a type of ghosting or motion blur from all of the UI elements. And then when in battle, there's a TV frame around the screen with static effects. We also see the return of the profile portraits, but they now indicate turns with command in text circling the icon. Persona 3's revolver wheel menu has been reverted back to a simple list menu, which is definitely easier to navigate. At the very least, the transitions while selecting options make it much more interesting than the first two games. The skill menu icons also return and are actually consistent now. Stuff like the results menu, dungeon HUD, and all-out attacks are slightly different, but basically the same as Persona 3. As I mentioned at the start, Persona 4 makes small improvements, but overall just refines what we've already seen and adds unique Persona 4 theming to it. Not as big of a step as we saw between Persona 2 and 3, but still a step forward, which definitely makes sense considering the timeline this game was made under. Anyways, let's get back to Persona 3 with Persona 3 Persona 4 Edition, also known as Persona 3 Portable. This is where we go slightly out of order, but it is for the sake of the flow in the video. Persona 3 Portable, compared to 3 and FES, has small UI changes and additions across the board. Most of these differences are either to make it more like Persona 4, to be more accessible on a smaller screen, to fit the widescreen format, or all of the above. For example, there is a slightly different text box shape, and across the board, adjusted scaling and positioning, some slightly different dialogue selection UI, different navigator portrait bubbles, different all-out attack UI, different layouts at some shops, etc., etc. All pretty minor. There's some bigger changes, like the character portrait and cursor replacing the 3D town exploration. I don't think anyone is a fan of this change, but at least the UI for it doesn't look bad. You can also now view all of the party members' equipment in the menu, which is a very good change. There's also some stuff like the social link rank up that is just taken straight from Persona 4 and brought into this game. Once again, I am not complaining, it is a nice quality of life improvement. Due to the removal of 3D scenes, there has been improved story presentation to fit the visual novel style, such as how character portraits now blink and occasionally have reaction icons pop up. Also, this game was possibly the first Persona game to include a backlog, but I have been unable to find a concrete answer on if it was in the original version or added in the 2023 remaster. This game also very notably has the addition of the Femc route, which aesthetically just goes to all the blue elements, but it keeps yellow as an accent color and green to represent Tartarus. It also, obviously, replaces Makoto's assets with Kotone. Femc really is just a palette swap. It has the same UI as the rest of the game. Also, strangely, the all-out attack UI is like steel blue in the Femc route, which really throws me off. Like, why is it not pink? Everything else is pink. So overall, there aren't really that many major changes between this and FES. It just makes everything work better in the new format and tries to make the most of the limitations of the hardware. However, the same thing cannot be said for the other PSP ports. The PSP version of Persona 1 brings with it a complete UI overhaul. If it's actually an improvement though, let's find out together. Aesthetic-wise, this game is gray. Gone are all of the fun, disjointed colors of the original. In fact, it's kind of hard to believe this came out after Persona 4. Did it use up all the colors? Or maybe they decided to make this game's main color gray? It uses a yellow-orange as the main accent color with a bit of green for stuff like the text. And honestly, I think green could have worked as the main color. It was the default text box color in the original after all. Or just anything with less gray. They also could have gone for dark purple with yellow as an accent color, which is what the box arts do. That would have been great. And I'm sure Atlus agrees because they retroactively assigned purple as the color for this game in all the 25th anniversary artwork. If they did that and then used some of that butterfly motif in the UI, then we'd be golden. Hell, they could have even used the color, styles, and motifs from the opening animation and it would have been great. Most of those colors are dark and muted, but lean towards purple and have a texture that could be interesting to play around with in menus. I think there's a lot of other options they could have done that would have made these menus look great, but I just really don't like the plain gray, especially when you compare it to what the original game looked like. Comparing the two name selections literally make them look like different games. There is just a lot of potential here for interesting stuff, even stuff that we see in other Persona 1 related content. We've also removed all of the customization options, which I think would have really helped spice up the UI like they do for Persona 2. But my anger aside, let's talk about what this game actually does. There's a lot of diagonal lines, for instance in the text box, HUD, and backgrounds. Shape-wise, it's not the worst, just, if only it could have been colorful instead of all black and gray. The interesting but inconvenient orbital menu of the original has been replaced with a basic list format, which also lacks the fun colors and style from Persona 3 and 4. But interestingly, the submenu options have been changed to match the ones in Persona 3 and 4, which I do think makes sense, especially considering how most people will play this game after they've played those games. There is also a lot of empty space in the main command menu. However, one positive aesthetic change is the introduction of the party member portraits along with their stats on the bottom of the screen. There's also good functionality changes. The UI as a whole is more user-friendly, of course at the cost of being rather simple and boring. Equipment now shows the use radius on the grid. You can save and load formations, even though I rarely ever changed them, and some other small stuff like that. The shops also now have unique backgrounds for different stores. They are nowhere near the level of Persona 3 and 4, but they are an improvement over the original version. It's usually just colorful diagonal lines with some floating icons to represent the store, and it adds some much needed color to the UI. Once again, did Persona 4 steal all the colors? The icons in the shop menu are also a huge improvement, so you can actually know what the items are for, especially considering how the original didn't say what party members could use certain equipment. The HUD is also an overall improvement. The minimap returns with very helpful icons and color scheming, and your party is now shown on the side, like in Persona 3 and 4. The top corner also shows the current dungeon and floor you're on, and the moon phase is shown both visually and with a counter to the full moon, even if it is very confusing coming from the calendar being in that place in the same format in the other games. We also see the introduction of cutscene replay on the main menu for the first time. A bit niche, but it's a great feature to have. The battles are also an overall improvement. They're quick and easy to navigate. The bottom of the screen now has portraits of your party members along with HP and SP bars, just like in 3 and 4, and the skill icons have made their way over as well. They're also now shown in the Persona stat menu too, and these icons have become a mainstay in the series for all the other ports and new releases and beyond, which is great because once again it's just a small thing that just makes it easier to navigate. The grid arrangement indicator has been removed, but there are still icons to indicate each party member's turn action, and still no convenient way to see turn order, which, like, real talk, is a serious issue in this game, especially considering the gimmick of the final boss in both modes, where they change their affinity mid-turn and you can't do anything about it. It's so frustrating. Also, the results screen has some nice stars, which I don't know why. It's stars in particular, especially considering the huge butterfly motifs throughout this whole game, including the opening song, but it's still nice, and I think there should be more stuff like that that adds some fun detail. You can probably tell, but I am overall not the biggest fan of this UI. I think there are some really positive functionality changes, but from a style front, it really falls short of all the other games. I didn't like the original Persona 1's UI that much, but this showed me that I really value the uniqueness of the aesthetics, and I'd much rather take that over this, which is, yeah, better functioning, but just bland. So let's see how the other PSP versions did. This is a very minor note, but I just love the butterfly cursor in the main menu of this game, and how when you bring it over to Tatsuya's face, it actually lights up a little bit. I love this main menu. I love this game. The things I would do for a Persona 2 remake, or even like a nice upgraded port. Atlas, please, I beg you. Anyways, let's move on to the actual important stuff. Luckily, we do not have to worry about the bland grays of the Persona 1 PSP version, or even the original PS1 version of this game, because it gives Persona 5 a run for its money with all of the red. It also interestingly has lime green as an accent color. I know complementary colors are supposed to look good together, but it really does just remind me of Christmas. There's a interesting line aesthetic going on, kind of similar to Persona 1 on the PSP, but with thinner horizontal lines compared to the thick diagonal ones. There's also a use of these moving, glowing, yellow, orange, just vertical lines in a lot of the menus. I'm not too sure why, but it does add some movement, so it's pretty nice. The menus are also very boxy, like the original. And just like Persona 1, this game has removed the menu and text box customization options. But I do quite like the background, which is the same animated grid pattern with the city from the main menu. The HUD is very similar to the PSP version of Persona 1, and the map is even further improved, showing where you have and have not been. Also, in dungeons, the map changes color to represent how close you are to an encounter. It's subtle, but it's a very nice feature to make random encounters feel less random. But it's also so subtle that many people might not even realize it's there. We also continue the party member portraits trend, but this game only shows their eyes. And when party members are buffed from food, they get an animated gold glow over their portrait, which I like that they show it in the UI, but I am really not a fan of the execution. And it's so distracting that I almost don't want to use the foods. Not like this game is hard enough to even require them. There's also a different compass, which I prefer both in function and style. And overall, a lot of menu elements in this game are very similar to the original in function, but with a fresh coat of paint. The shops lack the unique backgrounds of the PSP version of Persona 1, but that sweet multi-buy and multi-sell is still there. I also like the new shopping mall UIs, and it's a much better use of space to take up the full screen, but having both the logo and the store name is so redundant. There's also some nice functionality improvements like party member persona compatibility now being shown in the fusion menu, and how the status menu shows every single element and the character's affinity to them. The main 4 elements are boxed in a different color to make it easier to read, which also separates the physical affinities from the elemental ones. The affinities in this game are still confusing as fuck, but at the very least the UI is trying to help. The gallery from Persona 1 also returns, now expanded to include music on top of the cutscene replay. But I can't be too positive in these PSP remakes, I guess, because let's talk about the battle menu. First of all, the turn order is just amazing, and it's crazy that Persona 1 on the PSP did not have it. And once again, the addition of portraits and status bar is great. Also, for a first in the series, they have pained portraits when they have status effects, which is a neat touch. We also get the introduction of the negotiation emotion chart that was present in both versions of Persona 1, but not Persona 2 for some reason. And I like the staggered diamond-shaped icons. They add some interest and break up the boxes. I also like how fusion spells now include cut-ins similar to the all-out attack ones, and they look really good. But the changes made to the flow of combat are just weird and unnecessary, and the UI makes them feel even more horrible. If you want to change one party member's action, you have to go through everyone's turn, as opposed to the simple menu from before. This is made even worse by the fact that the battle UI is so slow. Even if you are spamming through it, it takes an unnecessary long amount of time. So much of my time in this game was just spamming through this really slow menu because I need to change one party member's action. It wasn't like this in the original. It's just a weird, unnecessary change. They tried to make the battle system more like Persona 1's, and they made it horrible. And both of these would be bad on their own, but together, and with the difficulty in this game, the combat, it feels horrible. But I do really like the red. Anyways, let's move on to Eternal Punishment and hope that it does not have these same issues. Unfortunately, Eternal Punishment did something even worse. It tragically removes the main menu butterfly. And aesthetically, the UI is identical to Innocent Sin, but now gray. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse. But don't worry, this game brings back some of the customization of the PSX version and allows you to change the UI color between gray, red, blue, yellow, pink, and purple. Personally, I played with purple. However, green will be the accent color no matter what you do. Besides that, most of the UI is genuinely just the same. But luckily, one of the few things that change is the battle menu, and it is for the better. The battle system returns to what it was in the PSX versions. You can change any character's strategy individually and also reorder them. But the orders do get messed up sometimes, but I think that is some type of glitch and not a UI problem. You can also switch between normal and single battle. Character portraits are also now fully shown at the bottom along with their current action, in a slightly different style than Innocent Sin. This is also the first and only Persona 2 game to properly indicate that the order you select your party in negotiation matters. Another strange change I've noticed is that explored areas no longer turn yellow on the map, and once again, that is about all that I noticed that is different. There could be more minor things, but overall, I think minus the removal of my favorite little butterfly, great improvements overall. This is definitely the best UI out of the PSP remakes. And what if we put all of the UIs we've seen up to this point in a battle to the death?
Persona 4 Arena.
Can you believe it? This is the first of many, many Persona spin-offs we'll be covering. But if you think this game being a spin-off will make the UI be boring and disappointing, then you are in for quite the shock. This game is a step above anything we've seen so far. Yellow is the main color with red as an accent, and then blue is the main color for the story and character select, and stuff that is yellow everywhere else is blue in those menus alone for some reason, but sure, why not? It's very sharp, angular, bold, and over the top, which definitely fits the fact that it's a fighting game. And I think that is best shown by the crazy-looking text box. There's also a lot of use of halftones and slashes. There's a lot of unique assets between all the different modes, and they all maintain that angular, energetic style. Similarly to Persona 3 Portable, this game is in a visual novel style, however, it is a step above presentation-wise. The portraits are fully animated with both blinking and lip flaps in a first in the Persona series. There's also cool UI effects like the TV when Teddy and Rise are talking, and the phone for calls. We also get animated reaction icons in a lot of scenes, a yellow outline on the POV character when they're talking, and the introduction of the backlog, which is a simple yet very helpful feature, and it is crazy that it took this long to be implemented, and in a spin-off game of all things. The main menu is also really cool. It shows an Inaba street view with different characters chilling out, and there seems to be 3 different versions, all at a different time of day with different characters. And I also love the text select effect. But there are a lot of options in this menu, which can get a tad confusing, especially to new players. At the very least, there is a description that says what each mode is. The character and story select menus show the characters as a spread of tarot cards, and locked characters are shown as face-down cards. When you hover over them, it shows basic information, and in battle modes, you can choose color presets. I feel like this is one of the first times we see the layout of the menus played with and not just the graphics. In battles, there are very cool red and yellow versus transitions when starting fights, followed by the beautifully animated round and match screen. Characters' portraits and personas are shown in the top corner, followed by the health bars. It also shows burst, persona cards, titles, and names, with a timer in the middle. The HUD strikes a balance between showing relevant information and looking really cool. Fighters can also be hit above the UI. This, mixed with slick cut-in elements and animation, make the fights feel energetic and fluid, even if you suck at the game, which I definitely do. You might expect a spin-off to not do much, but this really pushes a lot of boundaries with the really unique and interesting UI, as well as genuinely good improvements like the addition of the backlog and all the fun effects in the story segments. Even with the fumbles of Persona 1 and 2 on the PSP, you can clearly see that they're really hitting their stride with the UI. Something that continues into the next game, Persona 4 Golden. Immediately, the main menu goes for a very different vibe than Persona 4, and while I prefer the original, I do have a nostalgic, biased love for this one. There aren't many major changes in Golden. It's overall pretty similar, but there are quite a few notable ones, and definitely a lot more is changed than in, say, Fest to Portable. Aesthetically, the changes are all quite minor, but altogether they do make a difference. There's a new difficulty selection with a scooter, which I absolutely love. The orange heading box gains a new yellow box friend. There's a new TV loading screen icon, which I haven't really been mentioning them, but this is one of my favorites in the whole series. The pause menu has a new transition where the bars distort and warp around the corners, and some of the color lines throughout the menus are animated, and a lot of like really small things like a different time of day transition, different all-out attack and follow-up attack pop-ups, the removal of the distortion effects in the TV World HUD, just like a lot of small differences like that. With Golden, we also see some functionality changes that have become mainstays in the entire series, such as the grand introduction of Fusion Search in the Velvet Room, which is my preferred way of using personas, and it's just a very nice option to have. We also get the first introduction of the text skip feature, which has a nice UI overlay to resemble fast forwarding on a VHS. And finally, the backlog makes its way over from Arena. Once again, very handy feature. It's a wonder it took this long to be added. Beyond that, Golden also gives us the voice feature, which shows what other players spent their time on. It is very helpful, as it shows you things that you can spend your time on that you might not have known about otherwise, including social links. But the UI is really funky with a bunch of floating text bubbles. This makes it not really the most functional, but honestly it's kind of fun. Also added specifically in the 2023 port, Golden is the first and only game in the entire series to have an album where you can rewatch social links. It has a simple but nice booked themed menu, and it's kind of interesting that this wasn't added in the Royal or Portable ports or Reload. We also get some nice new menus. Croco Fur continues the cool and on-theme shop menu trend. However, unfortunately, the Persona 2 remakes did not inspire them to add the multi-shop and sell back. Golden also adds the TV listings menu, which is obviously in the style of a list of TV listings. Between the overall menu and all of the individual channels, they put a surprising amount of effort into the UI for what is basically just an extras menu, and I'm a big fan of it. Also, stuff like the bookstore and fishing UI was most likely present in Persona 4, but I did not get a chance to see it, so I'm showing them now. Overall, Golden, I think, made great improvements on what Persona 4 did, while also remaining very similar, and it is definitely my favorite UI that we've gotten to this point, although Arenas is also pretty nice. Persona 4 Golden was the first Persona game I played, and after hearing so much about how good the UI in Persona 5 was, I was both surprised with how good it was in this game and how people only seem to focus on Persona 5 and not how good other games in the series were. And that's part of the original inspiration for this video. A similar thing goes for the spin-offs going underappreciated. And speaking of which, let's get back to
Persona 4 Arena Ultimax.
Oh no, the re-releases are spreading to the spin-offs too. But it gives me more UI to talk about. The logo has now been lit on fire, and besides that, there's been a infection of blue. Like, there are so many UI elements that are exactly the same, but now blue. Perhaps this is to indicate the addition of more Persona 3 characters. Or maybe it's to indicate that yes, this is a different game, please give us more money. Like, even the yellow and red loading icon is now blue and yellow, and the overall color scheme has now become blue and yellow with red accents. In terms of story presentation though, it is like completely unchanged, even in new sections, with the exception of the dialogue selection being infected by the blue. Which, like, I get why it's the same, but I think it would also be really cool if it was different. Either between the original story and the Ultimax story, or maybe 3 and 4 sides. As far as menus, there has been a complete main menu overhaul, and it is such a change compared to the Arena one. There's a lot going on, and it feels kind of busy, but there's a lot to like about it. Like how when you first start the game, everything's dark and then it lights up. The overall look of all the TVs fitting both the story of Persona 4 and Arena. Also, the modes are now sorting into categories, which makes it a lot more digestible. And the UI for it resembles those message announcement boards. I also like how a spotlight shines on the currently selected category, and how the big TV shows the currently selected mode with a brief description, and the smaller TVs show fun clips. But I do have a bone to pick with some of these mode names and descriptions. For example, episode P4 is listed first, and all it says for the description is experience the story of episode P4. And the P4A story mode is at the bottom and says experience the story of P4A. Of course, it makes sense to start with the new story content since, especially at the time of release, most people will have played P4A first. But nowhere does it properly indicate to players that start with Ultimax and have no knowledge of the original game that episode P4, P3, and Adachi are all follow-ups to the P4A mode. The descriptions are so useless and redundant that they might as well not have them. It wouldn't be that hard to add text clarifying that the other ones come after P4A in either the main menu or information panel, or do what games like Ace Attorney do and have a start and chapter select thing. I just think it's confusing to new players. how are they supposed to know what episode P4 means versus the P4A story mode and what they should start with? And I say this because when I first played this game, I started with episode P4 and not only got the arena story mode spoiled for me, but was really confused until I figured out that I started with the wrong story. And there's a lot of ways they could have made it more clear. Also, the descriptions for a few other modes are just redundant as well. The P4A story mode UI has been changed to now have TVs representing each character, which when I first saw I thought was cool, but now having seen arenas, I really prefer the cards. The new story modes have a complicated fancy flowchart and they use TVs to represent each stop. I really appreciate the ability to zoom in and out of the flowchart. It makes it a lot better to navigate. We also have a new character selection, which has taken after Persona 2 in just being covered in red. The list of characters create a line dividing the screen, with the top half being player 1 and the bottom half being player 2. And I'm sure it looks great in co-op mode, but in single player mode it feels a little stupid because of the amount of unused space. At least some modes put the character profile there, but not all of them do. But I will say I really like how it shows the card to represent the Shadow and original versions. I also love how the difficulty selection looks in arcade mode, and just like with Arena, there's a lot of different assets between all these modes, and they just overall look great, and the aesthetic for this game works really well. For the HUD in actual battles, there are some slight differences, like the versus and round start screen, as well as the infection of blue. But beyond that, there are some small changes in layout stuff, like the fighter portrait being bigger and emphasized with color, while the persona is now shown in a TV box. I never really had a problem with the original one, but comparing it, I think Ultimax's looks a lot better. The health bars also have been changed. In P4A, they were yellow and turned orange when they were very low, and now they start blue and then go to green and later yellow. Overall, there are some aspects of Arena I prefer, but I do think I like Ultimax more. Even just from a thematic perspective, I really like the yellow being used to represent Persona 4, the blue for Persona 3, and the red for Arena. And while I'm a little mixed on the blue, I think the battle UI has some really nice minor design improvements, and the extra pops of color is great. And this is really minor, but I don't really love how the cyan and indigo blues work together. I think they should have just picked one. But as I said with Arena, I think the UI in both these games is really good, and I like how it pushes the series forward despite being just a spin-off. And oh boy, let's hear about even more spin-offs with Persona Q. This game is unique for being on the 3DS and having two screens full of UI to worry about. Aesthetically, the main colors are yellow and cyan, of course representing Persona 3 and Persona 4. There's also a lot of dark gray, and I think these colors work together well to create a fun vibe. And also magenta seems to be the main accent color, which, I mean, you can't really go wrong with primary colors. A lot of the menus are also colorful, like the main menu, command menu, battle menu, etc. menu. It also follows the rounded color block theming from 3 and 4, with an almost halftone-like pattern to break up some of the black portions. It also has simple animated effects like rotating text, slide transitions, etc. The text boxes are pretty basic, just being gray squares, but they have a dancing accent box behind it, which has the color changing depending on the scene. But what about that bottom screen? Honestly, I think that during cutscenes, it's really ugly. There's the weird gray circle pattern, which was fine at first, but I like less the more I look at it, and the off-centered bright blue command boxes. I haven't played many DS games, but I vastly prefer what we see in, for instance, Ace Attorney Investigations. And I definitely think the Persona series, especially considering the most recent games, can do better. But, you know, maybe perhaps it looks better on an actual DS. The save menu is also blindingly bright, but it fits the fun asterisks vibe of the game. The pause menu feels very playful with the bright colors and the wavy circular submenu icons. It also has the party member status, which, considering the space, the rectangles work, but I am not a big fan of the gradient on the SP and HP bars when the rest of the menu is flat colors. And the pause menus kind of follow Persona 3 and 4 for most functionality and navigation stuff. It also continues the Persona 3 and 4 theme of themed shop menus. It doesn't do anything too special in that regard, but they do look nice. And while you're in stores, the bottom screen shows your party member stats. And despite me not liking the design of the bottom screen during cutscenes, I think the game makes really good use of the second screen for details like that. When you're actually in labyrinths and battle, the top screen has basically no HUD, which makes sense because there's the bottom screen. But that is with the exception of the enemy indicator in the bottom corner, which, just as in Persona 2, is simple, but it works, and I love it. Also, it seems like it's the same little guys in Persona 4 Dancing, which we'll get to soon. Then the bottom screen has the map, and there's a lot going on. It can be kind of confusing at first, but ultimately there's only so much you can do to fit that much into that small of a space. I think the function definitely comes before the aesthetics, which in this case I think is very fair. While playing, the battle system feels like a mix of Persona 1 and Persona 4, and the UI reflects that. You have the classic list-style battle menu, but the colors and active character portrait add a lot even in the limited space. The weakness cut-ins are also a great use of space. And this game is the first to indicate that the enemies will be weak to a certain move when selecting the target, and it highlights weaknesses in the analysis menu. It's very small, but it's a nice quality of life that saves you from constantly having to check the analysis menu. And we will see later games continue this trend. Overall, I think Persona Q does really good at combining the styles of 3 and 4 while also having its own unique aesthetic. And functionality-wise, it's perfectly fine. Even if it's nothing too boundary pushing, it's overall really good. Let's just hope that trend keeps up for the other spin-offs, like
Persona 4 Dancing All Night!
Honestly, I think the best way to describe the aesthetics of this game is just dancing. They're bold, bright, and colorful, with the main color scheme being made up of pinks, blues, and purples with pops of yellow. There's also a lot of black backgrounds with star and triangle patterns. A lot of the text and borders have the style of neon signs. There's also a lot of circle patterns, and did I mention the stars? The story presentation takes a lot of notes from the arena games. Stuff like the phone UI, animated reaction icons that make the scenes feel less static, and lit flaps. Also, whenever you advance text, the mostly black text box gets a burst of color. I think it's cool, but it can also be kind of distracting. You get used to it, but I'm mixed on that. The main menu really gets you ready to dance with the bold dancing text, disco ball, lighting effects in the background, and you dancing crazy. There's a chapter select in the story mode similar to Ultimax, but it is missing the zoom out feature, which makes it a lot harder to navigate. On the other hand, I do really like how the background and colors represent whose POV it is. And then there's the dance menu that you'll be spending a lot of time in. It uses disco balls to represent each difficulty, and they each have a color to represent them, which was present in games like Golden, but it makes a lot of sense here because you're actually switching between the difficulties. The difficulty of an individual song uses stars to represent them, which I think is much better than other rhythm games that'll just give a level. It's the same information, just presented in a different way. The options are made up of 4 different colored stripes that converge on the character that's dancing. When you choose your character, though, the outfit menu requires you to scroll all the way through. There's no list of everything, which can make it clunky and take a while to change things. But I am a big fan of the shopping menu that brings back Persona 4's TV theming, now with an animated radial background and a whole lot of color. It's fun and functional. However, out of all of the menus, I think the collection menu is the real star of the show. It's themed like a CD collection, and different submenus have their own themings too, like the sound player looking like a neon radio, or the character viewer having the characters on a shelf like figures. But you don't go to the dancing game for a menu, you go to it for the loading screens. No, like seriously, every other game just has one animated icon, like the cards or the sprites in Persona 2, etc, etc. But this game has a bunch of fully unique, full-screen loading designs. It is clear that they put a lot of effort into just making it feel fun. Also, as a rhythm game, the UI plays a huge role in the gameplay, even more so than usual. There's a yellow ring that shows what button you have to press to hit each note, and the normal notes are yellow circles with a star inside that have a subtle circle appear as they get closer to help with timing. Each note has its own color, like hold notes being green, unison notes being magenta, or scratch notes being a thin blue line. Fever notes are a bigger colorful line with the word fever across it. Similarly with hits, each different type has a color, and it appears in text where the note was. Perfect hits are yellow with a ring of stars, and great are green, good are blue, and miss are red. It gives good feedback while not being distracting. For HUD, at the bottom of the screen, there's a progress bar. The top of the screen has stuff like high score, current score, fever, combo, and health. Your current combo is a big star in the middle of the screen. Your health is also represented by little dancing block guys. Their expression shows how close you are to a different rating, while the colors show the current rating. White is neutral, green is clear, multicolor is brilliant, yellow is not clear, red is about to die. Once you understand it, it makes sense, even if it can be confusing at first glance. And the results menu are just fun and shows off relevant information. So yeah, Persona 4 Dancing keeps up the theme of these spin-offs continuing to have great UI. Really makes me wonder what's gonna come next. Persona 5. It's time for the final boss of this video. And the reason I say that is because the user interface of this game is so iconic to the point that it is probably the reason most people clicked on this video. And there are plenty of videos out there going over just this game alone. People have cosplayed it for fuck's sakes, and every small improvement we have seen over time has been building to this. So let's get into it. It starts with just the coolest main menu, and it's fascinating to see how we went from just an Igor silhouette to this, but it all feels natural due to small improvements and evolution over years. And wow, it's almost like that's the entire thesis of this video. Aesthetically, the main color is red, but with a lot of black and white. It's bold and high contrast. For accents, it uses cyan, yellow, and magenta, which, as discussed, look great together, and with the red, black, and white. The UI is sharp, angular, and bold with a lot of diagonals. It's kind of similar to Arena style in that way. There's also a whole lot of movement, like the game can't be contained. Elements will be jutting out from each other and constantly in motion, like the dialogue selection indicators. And there's so many elements that in previous games would be in a grid-based box, but now they're dynamic and staggered. Also, Persona 5 uses a lot of stars. It's by no means special in this regard, but between you and me, it did them the best. I'm so sorry to Persona 1 PSP and Persona 4 Dancing. It also uses a ransom note aesthetic, which is seen in the bold, high contrast, ununiform text. It seems like something that would be hard to read, but in this case, it works. I think Persona 5 is a great example of needing to know the rules before you can break them. All of the visuals feel specifically crafted to fit the game's themes of rebellion and the flashy Phantom Thief aesthetic. This game also does amazing with the story presentation. The text box is just simple, black and white, but details like the tales leading to the characters' portraits, subtle animations, the header font choices, and high contrast makes them all look great. The game also uses a lot of cut-in portraits. We get a cut-in of Joker when he has dialogue options, which is first seen in Portable in the Persona 4 spin-offs, but getting to see the main character's sprites even occasionally makes us feel a lot more connected to him. Characters also have portrait cut-ins during dialogue, which makes the story scenes more dynamic and shows when they have strong reactions. Also, the animated portraits with blinking and lip flaps have made their way over to the spin-offs. Besides that, while you're walking around, speech bubbles will pop up and show what the general public thinks of the characters and current events. It's a super fun way of presenting information that's rather important to the atmosphere and build-up of the plot. Your party members and confidants can text you, and the phone UI looks amazing. It's the art of Joker holding a phone with the classic bold, bright colors. Each character has a profile pic in that same style with their signature color, and the text boxes follow the dynamic layouts of everything else in the game, which gives the conversations a great flow. And even the really minor details, like when you skip cutscenes, the transition is Joker crumbling up piece of paper. Even the save menu is great. It's made up of notebook pages, which is canonically what's happening. And then there's the command menu, which smacks you in the face, quite literally. It does nothing new in terms of organization, but goes so crazy in style. The animations, the 2D art, the clever use of 3D models, the color, the way the text shifts as you hover over it, they all work together so well. Each submenu is a new, cool pose of Joker with excellent use of color, contrast, and animations. These animations look great, but they're fast and they keep the menu feeling snappy and responsive. Also, the item menu sees the return of the proper sorting in submenus, which makes it feel better to explore than Persona 4's. Interestingly, the game also adds a calendar to the command menu, which is the first and only game that allows you to see what you spent your time previously on. For me, it was really helpful, and I think it should definitely make a return in future games. I just love all the small details, like how Joker smashes into the screen when you return to the title screen, or how the stat screen is so fun and dynamic. The Persona stat and analysis menus have also gotten an upgrade. The addition of color to the skill type icons have made it easier than ever to find skills and navigate. And then there's all the other aesthetic decisions. And then the tutorial menu? That of all things should not look this good. The dagger is so sick it almost makes me not get annoyed every time they pop up. For the HUD, the date and time has moved to the left corner, but looks amazing and stylish. I love how there's extra text to indicate seasonal events, like the flu season. And the weather is still shown, which isn't even important for gameplay anymore, but it's a nice vibe, and the animation is a great touch. The right corner is now taken up by the deadlines and tasks. And the map looks great and continues the style of the rest of the game. And when you expand it, it has Joker holding his phone. Same thing goes for the train map. All the location icons look great, and I love the bright lines, even if it can be a lot to navigate sometimes. But there's great functionality improvements in it too. I love how you can see if you have a social link in a certain area and if they're ready to rank up. And then that social link UI? I love how the chains surround your card and then are smashed by the UI that shows your rank. And the stars for friends and hearts for romantic interests is simple but great. And the transitions, of course they're great during the menu, but the calendar transition is so good that it is literally my mousepad design. I love the way that the red night light transitions to a bright blue sky as the text slams down, and then the dagger stabs into the new date. It's stunning. And those loading screen transitions, they show a stylized crowd of people in the city, which is already really cool, but the attention to detail takes it over the top. The outfits change with the season, there's different lighting depending on where you are. They might be either walking or standing on a train, and you can even have Anne and Ryuji appear. And then there's the shop menus, which people praise for EY and Takemi all the time, which is fair because they are amazing. But also, as we have seen, the Persona series is no stranger to cool, unique shop menus. I think it's great how this game manages to show the theme of the shop, but also show the personality of the shopkeepers, which is especially important considering this is the first game you can have social links with them. Takemi is most well known for the leg transitions, but I also love all the small details that make it feel like a clinic, like the checkbox to buy and the prescription text. And EY's shop makes me fear for my safety. I love the fence, bullet holes, and dog tags, not to mention the literal new item bullets and buy targets. As always, the use of color and animation work together to make them feel great. It is really just what was in the other games, but taken up to 11. Unfortunately, every other shop gets the same generic menu, at least to my knowledge, but Persona 5's signature style still makes it look cool. And of course, there's the Velvet Room, with the very welcoming chain transitions and equally welcoming mace-themed menus. The navigation and functionality is basically the same as Persona 4 Golden, but as always, with that great Persona 5 style. We also see the introduction of the activity log, which is like a streamlined version of Golden's voice feature. It breaks down actions into categories and shows percentages, and it's much better from a UI and UX perspective, but admittedly, less fun. The minigames also get some unique UI. I just love all the attention to detail. Then there's the infiltration menu, and the Mementos area select menu, which I can only imagine saw the Tartarus menu and took that as a personal challenge. In fact, I'd even say it's the best part about Mementos, which maybe isn't saying much because I hate Mementos. And all of that is without even getting to the battle menu. Gone are all the old menus you have to scroll through. Now each command is assigned a button, which makes battle flow better and feel quicker, and just overall really improves user experience. There's also indication in the menus, enemy selection, and baton pass if you have a skill an enemy is weak to, which once again saves from having to constantly check the analyze menu. The animations are used to make a super energetic results menu, but it also flows quickly so you can just spam through it and not waste time. Persona 2 on the PSP could never. Persona 5 also adds a new spin on things like the classic battle party member portraits. When it becomes their turn, the icon changes to have the character holding up the sign with their SP and HP. It looks cool and seamlessly indicates whose turn it is. And then the portraits change when they get different elements. The gun attack UI looks cool and dynamically shows how much ammo is left. And then, of course, there's the all-out attacks. The smooth transition into them, followed by the gorgeous splash screens, make them even more of a treat than in the previous games. And once again, Persona 2 really needs to take notes with those fusion spells. The battle cut-ins are cool and dynamic, and I know I've talked a lot about this game, and we all already know how good it is, but it really is just like absolutely a masterclass in UI design because it looks cool, fits the themes of the game, and is functional. That is literally all you could ask for. But it is also so clearly built on the backs of all the other games. You can see how ideas have made their way from Persona 3 and even further back and have ended up here. And that's why I said it was the final boss. It feels like what so much has built up to and is just, once again, really well done. I am a big fan of it. But of course, there are more games, and it'll be interesting to see how they build from this point. And we'll get to see that moving into our first Persona 5 spin-off.
Persona 5, Dancing in Starlight!
Aesthetics-wise, it's basically Persona 5 at home. You still have the bold, red, black and white aesthetic with the ransom text and stars, which still look good, but it is noticeably not as polished and interesting. You have yellow and cyan as the main accents, with a lot of colorful triangle, confetti, and disco balls. In my opinion, the main menu has none of the swag that Persona 4 Dancing's does, but I guess it's cool how the character that's dancing and the portraits behind change. And I think the transitions are good. For the dance menu, you get all of the same functionality as Persona 4 Dancing, and it looks good enough and is easy to navigate. There's bold, high-contrast elements over a red stained glass background. The costume menu, on the other hand, is actually a full-on upgrade over Persona 4 Dancing, at the expense of taking more button presses to actually start the songs. You get an actual list of all the costume categories and a list of all the costumes you can choose from, which is much better than just scrolling endlessly. As much as I dislike the social feature in place of an actual story, the UI for it isn't half bad. I like the menu with the party members, and the text boxes are simple but work. It also features the reaction icons from the other visual novel style games. When it comes to the actual dancing, unfortunately there are no more of the cool transitions. And the hype gauge is now an actual bar reminiscent of the palace security level UI in Persona 5, which I didn't even get a chance to mention because there was so much great stuff going on in that game. And on the surface, it is better, but I actually prefer Persona 4's. Mostly because this bar can now be 95% filled and you're still not going to get a clear. Or you'll end a song with a rainbow cheering bar and not get a brilliant. With Persona 4 Dancing, I knew what I was getting. Also, some elements like the high score have been removed or moved around to reduce visual clutter, which is an overall good change. They also made the note rings now red for Persona 5, which makes sense, but I also feel like the yellow with yellow notes just worked. And with that said, I am glad they didn't change the note colors because we'll get there. Behind the note rings, there is a star pattern that lights up for scratch notes in Fever, which I actually really like. They also added a new note. They're called double notes, and they're yellow and connected with a line. Basically just normal notes right next to each other. But the line connection actually makes them a lot easier to read and hit than if they were normal notes just next to each other. They also changed scratch notes to be significantly thicker and stand out more, which some people like this change, but personally I really don't. Yes, it improves readability in theory, but the issue is that Persona 5 Dancing's charting isn't that good, especially at higher difficulties, and will just throw scratch notes everywhere. This makes them far too distracting for an optional note. So ideally, I'd like this to be toggleable. However, I don't have an issue with the Fever notes because they already stood out a lot more and they're more important. And honestly, the Fever colors in this game just work really nice together. There's also small details like the combo icon and progress bar that I do really enjoy. So overall, I think both UI and quality-wise, this game is worse than Persona 4 Dancing. There are quite a few positive changes. I'm not sure I can fully say the same thing about
Persona 3, Dancing in Moonlight.
which might be weird to say at first. It is quite literally the same game with different paint. Functionality-wise, it works exactly the same. But let's go into the aesthetic, where we see the difference. It's blue with bright, colorful assets like stars, music notes, rings, and gems. Yellow and orange are the main accents, along with a lot of cyan, lime, and magenta. It seems all over the place, but these colors do look good together. It also makes really heavy use of circles, while also being more angular than any of the other Persona 3 games. And overall, the aesthetics feel a lot more unique to itself compared to Persona 5 dancing, which felt very based in P5 style. The social menu is nothing special, is very much carried aesthetically by the colors. In story cutscenes, the text box are the classic gray, but now angular, and have a blue heading box, which wasn't in any of the Persona 3 games, but looks great. Seeing the protagonist's head during dialogue made its way over from Persona 5 and looks good too. And once again, the blue looks good and feels similar to what we will eventually see with Persona 3 Reload. Overall, Persona 3 dancing has all the other changes and user interface, for better or for worse, from Persona 5 dancing, with one major difference: those blue notes. Time for a little rant. First of all, why change the note color in Persona 3 dancing but not Persona 5? That's just a bizarre inconsistency. And obviously they chose blue because that's Persona 3's color, but blue is already used for scratch notes, and they didn't change the color of those. So there are two types of notes that are the same color, which I'm sure you can guess creates some readability issues, especially with scratch notes becoming more prominent in both visuals and charting in these two games. But that's not even the only issue. There's some songs that heavily feature blue, and then you just kind of can't see the notes that well. The Atlas Meguro remix of Memories of You is by far the worst offender of this. There is nothing worse feeling in a rhythm game than missing a note, not because of your own skill, but because you couldn't see it until the last second because it camouflaged with the background. And it's not like this game is like Project Sakai where there's a way to change the background. You're stuck with the music video. I just do not get why they made this change. It is unnecessary and actively makes the game harder to play in a game that otherwise has pretty good UI. And it's even funnier because they could have made the notes red in Persona 5 dancing, and at least no other note is red, but they didn't. They only changed it in this game. It's just overall a bizarre choice and just bad. I can't say it fully ruins the game, but it gets close. It's bad. It leaves a sour taste in my mouth of the entire game. And I already don't have the highest opinions on the 3 and 5 dancing games, to be honest. So hopefully our next spin-off on the list does better. It's like Persona Q, but with a coat of red movie theater paint. Yes, I know I used this joke 3 times already, but I wrote this script over the course of a month and didn't realize until now, and I have nothing better to add. Obviously, aesthetically, this game leans very heavily on red, but interestingly, it is not the same red as in Persona 5. This red leans more orange. And we have cyan as the main accent color, which is a nice complementary color. Unfortunately, it loses the mashup of the different games' colors we see in the first Q game. Persona 5 is clearly the star of the show here. We do still have a lot of the roundness and funkiness from the first Q game, but it is also quite different. There's a lot of rounded pill shapes and big, sweeping, almost circular color blocks. But then there's some more sharp elements, like the battle menu, which takes from Persona 5's angular vibe, but more simplified. There's also a lot of movie theater motifs, such as the config menu being a ticket, or the velvet room being film reels. Q2 also uses a lot of dark gray circle tiled patterns to fill space. The text box from the first game gets an upgrade and is now elliptical. It still has the shaky backing, but is now red-orange with a glow effect. It also changes shape occasionally, which is a nice touch, and has icons in the background similar to Arena and Dancing's reaction images. The character models also have similar colorful blocks behind them. They're red-orange by default, but it can change depending on the scene. Notably, the text box color never changes, and that does bother me. Unfortunately, the bottom screen is the same, but now orange. There is a better background now, but I'm still just not a fan of it. The difficulty selection in this game is fun with the spotlight and all the different options floating around Ren as he changes pose. I bring this up because I had to restart this game 4 times due to it crashing on me. Thanks, Persona Q. The main menu is similar to Persona Q's, but more stylish, playing off both Q2's cinema motif and Persona 5's ransom text. And the shop menu is great as expected. It has the vibe of old neon menu signs and sells the effect with the flickering animation. And in typical modern Persona fashion, the style and transitions make the shop feel amazing while staying simple and functional. We also, fascinatingly, see the return of multi-cell, which is great, but still no multi-buy, and this is the only other game it shows up in. And I will die on the hill that we need to see a return of this specifically in the cell menu and item shops. Then there's the command menu, which is very red, like too much red, and also has Joker, because did you know this is a Persona 5 game? Persona 5 fans, please give us money and buy the game that we couldn't even bother doing an English dub for, thank you. The menu also has yellow accents on top of the typical blue and cyan, and I honestly can't tell if this is a nod towards Persona 4 or trying to look like popcorn. Overall, the menu is pretty typical, everything works as expected, but it isn't too interesting design-wise, which is quite disappointing considering Persona 5's menu. As far as other menus go, I really like the ticket/theater vibe in the area select menu, and the Velvet Room has a really cool film reel motif that is brought to life with the slick animations. When it comes to battle, there's, first of all, a really good film reel and clapboard transition, and all of your party members fall at the bottom of the screen exactly the same as in Persona Q, but with different color and font choices, and in my opinion, a better style overall. The battle menu has also completely changed to match Persona 5's buttons for each command. Your options are support, move, fight, and escape. In this case, the fight menu is a mashup of what would normally be the attack, skill, item, and guard commands. I get what they were going for, but personally, I vastly prefer the original one. 90% of the time, you will be doing one of the fight actions. So instead of streamlining it, it just made that one menu more cluttered. At the very least, the actual UI for the battle menu is cool. It has your party members in a tape reel with a stylish text box for the actions that changes to indicate if they have a boost. You can also spam through this menu, specifically if you want everyone to attack, for instance, which is so lovely to experience compared to the PSP version of Innocent Sin. I'm so sorry that Persona 2 keeps catching strays in the latter part of this script. Like, I truly love that game, but the UI left things to be desired. As a staple, we have the element type icons, but they are weirdly rounded with a gradient, and it really clashes with the overall flat style in the rest of the game. There's also small details like the Persona 5 ransom style lettering for damage. A big upgrade in this game for me is the map screen at the bottom, which now really feels like Persona. I love the open book effect and how the area name is right there at the top, adding some interest. But other than a graphics overhaul, it behaves the exact same way as Persona Q, which you can say about a lot of this game. Overall, I don't think it does anything bad, and there are some aspects that I do really like, but it also leaves room to be desired, and this could just be my saltiness at it being very focused on the Persona 5 cast and not showing off the 3 and 4 cast, the same way that the menu in Persona Q specifically focuses on the coming together of those two casts. But overall, that's kind of how a lot of this game feels, and it's kind of why I like it less than the original. But speaking of liking things less than the original, that is very far from my opinion. On our next game, Persona 5 Royal. I'm gonna be honest, Persona 5 Royal is just Persona 5 but better, and I mean that both story-wise and, of course, with the UI. The menu screen is great in its own way from the original. I honestly can't tell which I prefer. As far as aesthetic and navigation changes, with the PC port comes a custom dagger cursor, because of course they did that. Then there's the calendar transitions, which were great enough already, but now feature rain and other special situational assets. There's the new Showtime feature with great UI. Now when characters call you, there is specific UI to represent that, which I see is taking notes from Persona 4 Arena and dancing. Certain days, like holidays, now have new special date icons, and the Thieves tool menu is now improved to be even cooler. I'm sure there's other small changes like this throughout the game, but these are the ones that I've noticed. And then, of course, there's our new menus. Jose's whole shop UI could honestly be a wallpaper. The silhouettes, the starry background, the star and moon icons, the bubbly text, it's all so great. But also, side note, what is up with Jose? He is such an unexplained mystery. And also, as a royal, the best part of Mementos because the stamps were the only thing keeping me going through that fuck-ass excuse for a dungeon. Speaking of which, the stamp god screen is so pretty too. Then the Thieves' Den follows in the footsteps of the TV listings for having way too much effort put into it for a glorified extras menu. It's very red with a lot of cool layouts and extras in there, including some very cool but very spoilery UI assets. Like, they made a whole deck of cards and UI for Tycoon, and I'm not complaining because it's so fun. Half of the runtime on my footage for Royal for this video was just me playing Tycoon. Overall, Royal makes a lot of small differences, but it's just icing on the already very delicious, amazing cake that is Persona 5. So I am not going to complain. So let's move on to even more Persona 5 with Persona 5 Strikers. And like the other Persona 5 spin-offs we've seen so far, I think Strikers is definitely very Persona 5. But honestly, it's quite masterful. This game really wants to be Persona 5 too, which is reflected in the aesthetics, as honestly, in a lot of ways, it doesn't have much of its own identity and is just a variation on P5's. Which, that does not mean that it is bad, and it still has quite a bit to set it apart. Like the focus on the whole party beyond just Joker. Obviously, you have your usual red, black, and white as the main colors, but with a large amount of bright blue, as seen in the calendar, main menu, and Showtime gauge. And then for things like the hover effects, they really just said that their accent color would be the entire RGB color wheel. It's definitely an interesting choice, but I'd be lying if I said I disliked it. It adds a nice pop of color to a lot of the black and white menus. And also a very heavy use of halftones, which look great. Stuff like text box and story presentation isn't quite identical, but it's pretty darn similar. When it comes to the menus, the main menu takes the silhouette and mask aesthetic from the main game, but makes it colorful, and makes each party member stand out with their unique colors. And then the main options are displayed as a direction sign with a unique but familiar Persona 5 style font. The trailer menu also has a similar sign style while also showing all of the Phantom Thieves just chilling. Same goes for the Jail Hub UI. The date and time HUD now has a round, bubbly look and contains the current location as well, fitting the road trip theme. While the rest of the HUD is very similar to Persona 5, with the minimap, location, and requests all in a similar style. The phone text menu is also similar, but now cyan and rounded. And good on Joker for using that metaverse money to buy a new phone instead of food for Yusuke. The calendar transitions keep what already worked great for Persona 5, but adds a unique spin on it with the blue sky and current location as the background, which also makes it double as a map. Then, when it comes to the command menu, Strikers was very clearly fighting an uphill battle. It's hard to even try to compare to the original Persona 5 one, so let's see how it goes. All of the submenus are made of big, bold bubble letters, and Joker is once again present, but as a full-on 3D model instead of Persona 5's 3D 2D mix. Overall, the choice to use 3D models causes some nice animations between screens, but they also take longer and aren't as snappy as Persona 5's. Each submenu features a different Phantom Thief with their signature color, and I do really enjoy the colorfulness and focus on the whole party, especially with the nice animations tying it together. But, as previously mentioned, some of these animations, while great on their own, take a bit too long in the context of a menu that players need to flip through quickly and constantly. Whose Haba in the system menu is by far the worst offender and makes trying to change key bindings or look at character tutorials a nightmare. And I'm speaking from experience on my first playthrough, because this game's keyboard key bindings are kind of ass. It's definitely not as good as the original Persona 5's menu, but it does have some positive aspects while also failing in others. As far as shops go, the Velvet Room and generic shop menus are pretty much identical to Persona 5's. All of the effort clearly went into Sophie's shop. I love the light and bright colors and bubbly look. While being very different from the typical Persona 5 style, it fits great with her as a character. And of course, it also has the Persona 5 signature cool shop transitions. My personal favorite is probably how a cart appears for the buying confirmation that she then pushes off the screen. And then there's Joker's Kitchen, which is just a simple screen, but the colors and diner aesthetics make it look great. Also, the recipe pot opens when you have enough ingredients to make something. That's such a small detail, but it's really cool. In terms of battle, it uses a lot of the same stuff as Persona 5, like the health indicators, cut-ins, weak indicators, general Persona UI. The bottom left corner shows the current character's SP, HP level, Persona, and Showtime progress, while showing the other active party members above it. I really like how it's laid out to show all of that information so concisely, clearly taking notes from Arena Ultimax. But then, as soon as battle starts, the other party members gain a burst of their signature color in the masks, and their HP and SPs are displayed. You barely even notice it, but it's such a great little detail, and then when they die, they lose that color. Then, when a one more occurs, they pop up in the top left corner and over both the enemy and the available character. It makes them eye-catching and clearly shows the positioning of the enemy and other Phantom Thief relative to you. And then there's Showtimes, which are the all-out attack equivalent with flashy animations and a really cool ransom note style shows over screen. Meanwhile, the all-out attacks normally don't have too much fanfare not to break up the flow of battle, but when you break a boss's shield, they look great too with the chains and the take your heart screen. This is the analyze screen that pops up in a translucent window right next to the enemy being analyzed. There is just an overall great use of both 2D and 3D visual effects to make the battles feel energetic but also readable, and the UI is very clear and unobtrusive to quickly display information among all that. So overall, while Persona 5 Strikers is trying to be very similar to Persona 5, it has some of its own unique aspects that make it work well in my opinion, and also make the transition from turn-based to real-time feel a lot better. However, I feel like it's a shame that none of the Persona 5 spin-offs have tried to really break free into their own style like the Persona 4 ones did. That is, until our next entry.
Persona 5 Tactica!
Persona 5 Tactica might have come out at a time where a lot of people were sick of Persona 5, but it is honestly a really underrated game. Aesthetic-wise, I love the style. It feels like an evolution on Persona 5 instead of just another copy of it. Also, a lot of the UI style is based on or similar to the unique character style of Tactica, which personally I'm a big fan of. Like how the dialogue cut-ins are rounded to fit the portraits, but still sharp and jagged at the same time. It uses the classic colors, but also with beiges, off-whites, and more grays. There's also a lot of halftone. The other games used it too, but this game takes it to an extreme. There's also a lot of that star motif and splatter effects. For shapes, it uses a mixture of harsh straight lines and circles, and is overall quite geometric. The text box has a very similar style to other Persona 5 games, but uses red, and also makes a heavy use of the animated reaction icons from previous spin-offs. I will say this is not fully UI related, but I really don't like the blur layer on the background in the cutscenes. I think the 2D art looks really cool and crisp, and I don't know why they had to ruin it with a blur. As far as menus go, I love the tutorial screen with the megaphone shouting tutorial. Every other spin-off to this point just stole the dagger from Persona 5, and while it's cool, it gets old after a while. I love that this game actually tries something new. Similarly, the save menu continues the journal theme, but in a different way. There's just a lot of small details that I like how the flame on start battle in the mission menu emphasizes it, or the great results menu. Then there's both the battle prep and hideout menu, which have a leading line pizza slice layout coming from an asset of Joker. The red skin gives it a really unique vibe, and I really like the 2D assets used in a lot of these menus. I will say, once you get used to it, the two different menus make sense, but it's confusing what is on which at first. And stuff like the report menu being styled like a journal with ripped out pages is peak simple but effective, cool looking Persona UI. Then there's the weapon shop, which has a red and white target vibe. I'm gonna be honest, having the dummy pop up and down looks cool, but it's just kind of really funny to me. And then there's the Velvet Room, which uses a lot of chain and gear clear imagery, naturally with great transitions. Also, Lavenza is just really funny in this game between like the welding and the train. When it comes to the actual battles, I like the little your turn and enemy turn screens with the cards. The HUD shows buffs, objective, turn, and how many of each enemy there is. It's simple, but the different colored icons to represent the different types of enemies is very helpful. And the classic party member battle portraits will now show in red if you've used their turn or not, while the voltage is shown by a star. The battle actions take after Persona 5 and Strikers, with your available options showing up next to the current party member and have all the corresponding buttons. But triple threats appear green instead of red to emphasize them. Overall, the battle UI is simple but works for showing things like options and actions. Things like the circle showing persona range, the red lines showing gun range, the triangle that lights on fire for triple threats, the red-yellow shield icons, and more are all small additions but make the game feel great to play and strategize. Same goes for the get 'em, resist, and down indicators. The analyze/overview menu can be useful, but it's also a pain in the ass to navigate. Just because it's so long, there's definitely could have been a better way of doing that. Also, the transition between the DLC main menu and the normal one is just so cool and slick. I love it. Like how the whole world shifts and then the music kicks in, it's really cool. Besides that, the UI is all pretty much the same besides some small differences in like the hideout menu. Overall, I'm really glad that Tactica actually branched out from the Persona 5 style and tried some new things. And now that we've seen the peak of Persona 5 spin-off UI, let's see what the next entry has in store. Persona 3 Reload, the game that had me actually losing my mind with excitement over the user interface when it was first teased. You know it's crazy when a series has people losing their mind over the user interface in the trailers of all things. And considering that, you can imagine my excitement when I first opened up this game to the main menu, which is reminiscent of the original games while also being unique. It also features similar silhouettes to Persona 4 and 5, but while those had the masks/glasses emphasized in white, Persona 3 Reload has the Cease armband shown in bright red. The main menu also changes after you get the true ending for maximum emotions. Aesthetically, most in your face are the blue palette and use of water motifs. Persona 3 FES used mostly lighter blues and desaturated dark blues, while Persona 3 Reload uses much more saturated blues and less light colors. Besides the blues, there's a lot of use of white, gray, cyan, yellow, and red, as well as green, which is used to represent the dark hour, and sometimes it feels like I might as well just be listing the whole rainbow. It also uses a lot of circles, like the moon, but also triangles, and a lot of bold font in all caps. In terms of story presentation, I think Reload is really interesting. Ever since Persona 2 on the PSX, almost every game has had the main body of the text be a neutral color, usually black or gray, but Persona 3 Reload sees the return of bright blue text boxes. And also, Persona started using gradients again, which really shows how much style trends are a cycle. And honestly, this choice really surprised me when I first saw the trailers for Reload, but I think it works. Also, I can't believe it took me this long, but I realized that all of the games use white text on a dark background. Reload also uses a saturated dark blue behind character portraits, and a similar shade for the main body of the text box, while text accents have a bright saturated blue, and the subheading has cyan. That same style is used for thought bubbles, dialogue options, which is now standard to show the protagonist, and other menus throughout the game. There's also a highlight on character portraits, which dynamically changes based on the lighting and environment, which I think is a very nice touch and helps you feel immersed in the atmosphere of the scene. Also, while the original game's portraits were static, Reload has lip flaps when they talk. And interestingly, unlike 4 and 5, they don't blink. The character cut-ins during cutscenes from Persona 5 also make a return and look great with the game style. As far as HUD goes, the date and time HUD displays the same information as in the original, but now also has large text stating if it's a weekday or weekend with a cool water effect. As nice as this looks though, it isn't really that important to know if it's a weekday or weekend, but during the dark hour, the text instead displays dark hour and the blue turns green. The HUD also gains a mail icon in the top left and a mini-map in the bottom left, neither of which existed in the original Persona 3. And let's talk about those menus. The command menu shows an upside-down asset of Makoto, with the blue hair and uniform making up the menu options. There is a very big water theme with the splash effects as the menu opens, and the shader placed on the text and background, and how Makoto bobs up and down. The menu assets are also fully 3D, but have a 2D effect due to the lighting and shaders used. As far as the actual menu options go, they are the same as Persona 5, and with the exception of the quest and calendar editions, they have been pretty much the same since Persona 3. Except unlike Persona 5, the calendar doesn't show past days' actions, it just shows what jobs are available and when the full moons are. And of course, the sub-menus are all gorgeous and similarly show Makoto floating underwater in various positions with the great transitions and color blocking we have come to expect from this series. My favorite has to be the stat menu that shows Makoto holding a glass shard that reflects the selected party member. Also, the way that each party member is given a different main color looks really cool and was clearly inspired by Persona 5. But I will say the social link menu that has the transition of Makoto revealing the tarot card is a close second for my favorite. As far as other menus go, the mail menu only shows today's messages and has single messages instead of chains, unlike Persona 5's messaging feature. And the generic shop menu is my favorite out of all of the games. It's simple, stylish, and I love how it changes with Makoto's outfit, to the point of even having a yukata variant for the Kyoto trip. The network menu returns from Persona 5 and is even easier to access, but ironically with the other UI improvements, it's less useful than it was back in Golden. I also love the transition between different times of day and how it looks like a clock hand moving. The daily calendar has a similar transition, and I absolutely, from the bottom of my heart, adore the dark era transition and how it shows multiple different types of clocks clicking over, freezing, and turning green. The social link menu makes its return with card silhouettes and stars representing each link surrounding the Arcana card. And those music notes that started all the way back in Persona 3 have continued and survived up until now, albeit with more animation and style. It's also interesting seeing how things like the town map are different. It has noticeable lighting differences and now navigates by selecting the area instead of the name of the area. There's also now icons to show if there's a social link or a quest in that area. The shops are also very interesting to compare to Persona 3, which was the first game to have the themed shop UI. You can clearly see how it has improved on ideas in that game. The police menu not only looks better, but is also much easier and nicer to navigate, and while the antique and pharmacy menus are simpler, a similar thing goes. As far as the Velvet Room goes, the opening silhouette animation is really cool, but honestly too long and just inconvenient, especially since you need to fully leave the Velvet Room again to check menus. But there is something about the card menu that I just love so much. And the fusion features like search and removal of Triad Fusion from Persona 4 and 5 have made their way over. When it comes to Tartarus, the HUD is basically the same in function as Persona 3's, but party members' equipment can now be changed from the menu. The party member portraits have the same profile look, but I love the cleanness and clarity of the new ones. Especially when how they get hit, the art visibly changes to a pain version, best seen with Junpei's scream, and how when inflicted by ailments, the pain version will be used with both color and particle effects to represent the ailment. There's also the addition of the Theurgy bar, which transitions from blue to bright red when full. And I just love the battle transitions. As you strike an enemy, a blue slash appears on the screen and changes into a silhouette of Makoto running into battle, while if you're the one attacked, the screen shatters. The actual battle menus are very similar to Persona 5 in function, but with a round circle look, reminiscent of the moon. A change I love is how when choosing a target, it displays the type of skill you will be using. I also love the transitions from the full models to the silhouettes in the menus, and since they're in 3D, the silhouettes change depending on the outfit. Overall, the transitions are unsurprisingly great. Like the all-out attack pop-up that goes into the animation, into the splash art finishers that make their stunning return, or how shifting between characters look. And the one more cut-ins in this game are gorgeous. They appear behind the character and have animated details like hair and bubbles, and then the cut-ins are shattered by the summoning of the persona. When I first saw that in the trailers, my jaw fully dropped. Overall, the UI in this game just looks absolutely great. It took the best aspects of Persona 5, as well as some stuff from the other Persona 3 games, while also putting its unique spin on everything. That fits the unique identity created by Reload. And while some people don't like that, I think with a remake like this, you kind of can't please everyone. There's always going to be people who are mad that you're too different from the original or too similar. Also, a fascinating fact is that the art book for this game shows UI concept art. It's very interesting to look at other possibilities for the UI and think about why those might not have worked. While some of them are cool, I think that what we got were clearly the best options. So let's move on to more Persona 3 Reload? No matter how controversial it is, the fact that the DLC has its own unique menu UI honestly makes it worth the price tag for me. This is a joke, please don't attack me. The main menu takes after the journey with the silhouettes and changing after beating it. The command menu has the same layouts as the normal version, but the Makoto assets have been replaced by Aigis. And yes, it was that way with Fess and the Answer as well, but there is clearly a lot more effort put into these. And in my opinion, they make a lot more of an impact. The assets of Aigis aren't fully red, but have a red tint, especially compared to the bright whites with Makoto. This reflects some of the themes and struggles Aigis goes through the game, quite literally replacing Makoto in the menus, but not being able to fill it out in the same way. The differences in Aigis and Makoto's expressions and poses really says a lot about the respective characters and stories. But besides that, the UI is basically the same. Even the submenus that have no use in the DLC, like the social link and calendar, are still there, which they could have removed them. So overall, I do really like the details in the difference of the command menu, but ultimately it is just DLC. It is just the same UI. And now we are at the last entry, the most recent Persona game, unless you are watching this in like 2026 after Persona 4 Revival has come out, which, you know, I don't know if I'll ever make a YouTube video again, but I will definitely talk about that. So without further ado, let's move on to the last Persona game we will be talking about. Persona 5, The Phantom X, which is last, and probably not least, but definitely pretty down there. Because, like, also, why can't this game just update through Steam? It is so stupid to have the game running to update it. Like, not even a launch. You need to have the full-ass game open. It took over 30 minutes, and it gives a stupid false progress bar. Don't tell me I'm 100% done when I'm only halfway. That was a bit of a side tangent, but it's still tangentially related to UI. As far as aesthetics go, this game is very much Persona 5, but an alternate universe, which fits this game's themes of being bad. Okay, I'm gonna try not to be too much of a hater, but it really just has a lot of the same style and aesthetics of Persona 5 to the point of straight up reusing a lot of assets, which gives me less to talk about. Even the main menu lacks its own identity and is just a different version of what Persona 5 Royal did. Stuff like the story presentation is exactly the same, both with UI and music, which really throws me off. And overall, I find a lot of the UI to be cluttered. It takes Persona 5's style, but lacks the clarity and polished. It's also very clearly designed for mobile, which makes it not pleasant to play on a keyboard and mouse, both with ease of navigation and just the amount of clutter. It's also apparently rough on a controller too, and I found this especially noticeable with things like lack of hover effects. As far as the HUD goes, it's just too much. In the top corner, you have the minimap and location, which are overlapping each other, along with a whole bunch of menu icons cluttering up the screen and demanding your attention with bouncing yellow. Also, the discount and shop tabs are literally the same. Then on the other side, there's the objectives from Persona 5, which are fine, and the party member portraits, which are jutting out into the middle of the screen. In Persona 5, they were along the bottom of the screen, and in most other games, they were vertical, either of which would have made it look a whole lot better than going horizontal in the middle of the screen. Then, as a clear artifact of this game being made for mobile, there are command icons taking up large amounts of the screen real estate. The icons do look cool and all, and I get it for mobile, but in the PC port, they should be moved and shrunk down at the very least. And then there's the menus. The only menu that gets the Persona 5 character and transition treatment is, of course, the shop menu, where you are supposed to spend real money. And of course, it looks good, but I don't like it just on principle. In typical gacha affair, the wish menu is cluttered, but it doesn't look too bad, all things considered. And that goes for a lot of the menus. They might have good assets and style at a glance, but at the same time, they're cluttered, hard to navigate, and lack the fluid transitions of the other games. And I think the lack of transitions especially throws me off in a lot of places like the character menu. And don't even get me started on the horrors of the events menu or how the mail menu gives me the same dread as checking my real life inbox. The phone tab menu doesn't look too bad in pure style, but having the same options in both that menu and the HUD is just redundant, especially when so much HUD space is taken up by clutter. And the Metaverse nav menu isn't necessarily bad for a gacha game, but I know Persona can do better, and we've seen even just Persona 5 games do so much better. Moving into battle, I kind of like the turn icons in the top corner of the screen. However, the party member portraits feel lacking compared to how they dynamically change in Persona 5 during the turn. The keys corresponding to actions in battle is great as always, and switching with the star animation feels really satisfying, but that's not really anything new. And a change that I'm very much not fond of is how the game shows if the enemies are weak to or block an attack, even if you don't have them selected. It's probably a leftover from the mobile version, but I just don't like it. And overall, that's kind of all I have to say on Persona 5X. It's just really the lack of transitions and polish that make it, while looking like Persona 5 at a glance, just not feel very good. Usually gacha games have like cluttered UI with a lot going on and demanding your attention, but I think the Persona 5 style makes it feel worse. Take something like Genshin Impact. It's all very simple and unobtrusive despite the obtrusive nature of the UI itself, but Persona 5 trying to be flashy and also have all the issues of gacha game UI is just not a good combination. Also, the Subway Slammer is so stupid. Like, I dropped the game on that alone, and it took like my least favorite part of Persona 5 and made a whole game off of it. Like, cool. That's it. We're done. Of course, I hate to leave it on such a sour note. I could talk about how great Metaphor's UI is, but this video is long enough as it is, and I haven't actually finished that game. For someone who's played every Persona game, now including different versions of each of them for this video, I haven't actually played many Atlas titles outside of the Persona series, but I'm sure they have good UI as well. But I guess we can look forward to Persona 4 Revival, which despite the mixed reception to the teaser, I am very excited for, and I'm definitely interested to see what they do with the UI. If they're gonna take a golden approach and do something similar but slightly different, or do what Reload did and completely rebuild it from the ground up with new motifs and stuff. Of course, they can double down on the TV motifs or add some mystery elements, and there's a whole lot of stuff they can do. And I, for one, am very excited to see it. And honestly, if I had more time, I think it'd be really interesting to do UI mock-up for what Revival might be, or even like a Persona 1 or 2 remake, and other people have, and I think they're really cool and well done. I also saw a really cool Persona 6 concept mock UI, which I thought was good. Also, in typical YouTuber fashion, I did a tier ranking of all of the user interfaces. I think the positions are kind of self-explanatory based on what I said about them. And this list does imply that I think being boring is worse than being inconvenient. And yes, that is true. But if you reached this far, thank you so much for sitting through this absolute monster of a video. I've never made a YouTube video before, and I might never again. But if you actually watched this and sat through it, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. You can let me know if there's other Persona related stuff you'd want to do. I did go down a rabbit hole of obscure Persona media, which would be interesting to make a video on, but that's an idea so niche, it gives this video a run for its money, so I guess let me know if that's something you could be interested in. If you enjoyed this, you can like and comment. If you didn't enjoy this, it's a wonder you made it this long, and just, yeah, thank you, and have a nice rest of your day.